Hi everyone, I'm Nick Olivo, and today I'll show you how to build a Ouija board in Roll20. You'll be able to send short messages from beyond via the Ouija board. You'll also be able to respond to yes or no questions. And of course, you can tell your players goodbye when it's dramatically appropriate. Now, because this uses Roll20's API, a pro account will be needed in order to do this. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. Ouija boards provide a way for your players to learn information from the beyond in-game. Maybe they're exploring Castle Ravenloft and they come across a Ouija board in a parlor. Or maybe they're going through a haunted house in a Call of Cthulhu scenario and they come across a Ouija board that reveals some cryptic bit of information. Any way you slice it, this is a really neat way to provide information to your players while keeping the drama and tension really high. So, if this is something you just want to use in your game, the first part of this video will show you how to set things up, how to install the script, and how to run the commands. And if you're interested in seeing how the script was built, stick around for the second half of the video where we go through and actually build the script line by line. Okay, so first thing you need to do is go into your game, go into the page toolbar, create a new page, and name it Ouija. O-U-I-J-A. And there we go. Now that we've got that, we need the actual Ouija board. You can find one of these just by going out and Googling for Ouija board. And once you've got it, bring it in and set the dimensions appropriately for, whatever size image that you've found. And then put that image onto the map layer like I've done right here. So now switch over to the token layer and bring on your pointer. The official name for the pointer is planchette, so that's a thing you know now. Now the planchette can be whatever you want, but I recommend you make it a triangle of some type. I think the graphic that I'm using here is actually a picture of a lamp that I found online. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the GM layer, and then I'm going to go to the chat and I'm going to roll a d4. And with that d4, I'm going to grab the die right here. I'm actually going to drag this right onto the GM layer. And now I'm going to rotate it so that it's pointing at the letter A. Now double click on it. And we're going to give this a name, and we're going to name it Ouija A. And so now when we want to spell a word that includes the letter A, the script is going to search for an object called Ouija A, find its location on the board, and then move the planchette to that token's location. And it will also rotate the planchette so that it's pointing at the correct angle like you saw earlier. And this is why I recommend using a D4 for this, because they're arrow-shaped, and it really gives you a good clean picture of where the planchette will be pointing when it snaps over to this particular location. Okay, so now we need to repeat that for all the other letters, the numbers, and the yes, no, and goodbyes. So just copy and paste the token, move it over a little bit, adjust the rotation, double click, change the name to the new character, so Ouija B, save, and then lather, rinse, repeat. So you're going to do that for each letter, then you're going to do it for the responses. So again, we'll just drag on here, and so no will be Ouija underscore no, and then yes, we'll just copy and paste that. That's going to be Ouija underscore yes, and then goodbye will be Ouija underscore bye. So like so. I'm also going to place another one up here at the top of the board, and I'm going to call that Ouija underscore reset. I just want there to be a place where I can put the planchette that doesn't have any significance. It's not pointing at anything. If I just want to put the board back to like a default state. Lastly, you're going to want to make sure that you've named the planchette properly, and that's going to be Ouija underscore planchette. Like so. So after you've gone through, created a marker for each letter, number, and response, what you should have is something that looks kind of like this, where we have a marker for each individual letter. Each of these is going to be named properly. So the E here is Ouija underscore E. The W is Ouija underscore W. And then the numbers are named similarly. We've got Ouija _3, Ouija _8, and so on and so forth. And what this is going to do now is allow us to snap the planchette to each one of these markers to spell out words or provide the appropriate response. However, if we come across a word that has a repeated letter in it, for example, the word hello has 2 L's back to back, what would happen if we spelled this out is we would snap to H-E-L, but then we're already on the L, so the planchette's just going to stay there, and then we're going to jump over to the O. So it's going to look like we're spelling H-E-L-O instead of H-E-L-L-O. So what we need to do is provide a way for the planchette to spell out the same letter twice and have it be clear to our players. And so the way we're going to do that is by putting a second set of these pointer tokens in here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'm going to spin it around so it's pointing at things from the top. And we're going to double click on this and we're going to name it A2. Save that. And then we're just going to repeat that for all the other tokens as well. So we'll do B2 and then I'll do C2 and so on and so forth. You may be saying, well, Nick, some of these letters don't repeat. In English, you can have 2 L's, you can have 2 M's, but, when would you have, 2 Z's? So you want to make sure you do this for each one of the letters and responses, because when you're dealing with other fantasy languages or when you're dealing with the names of extraplanar entities or stuff like that, there's a really good chance that you're going to have some really strange letter combinations. And we want to make sure that we can spell out names that have repeating letters in them. So ultimately, what you're going to have is something that looks like this, where we have a duplicate set of tokens going across the top. Each one of these, again, is named the letter 2. Same thing with the numbers, right? So this is 6, and then the one on the top is 6-2, and this is no 2, and so on and so forth. So each item needs a duplicated token with the number 2 at the end of it. Well, technically not each one. There are 2 on here that don't have the duplicated token. That's goodbye, because once you've told your players goodbye, that's it. You're not going to tell them goodbye a second time in a row. And I've also left the reset as just having 1 token as well. But all the letters, all the numbers, and the yes and no response all need to have a second entry, so that if you've got a double letter, what's going to happen now is the planchette will move to the L, for example, and it'll be pointing like this. And then if we're spelling the word hello, it'll pop up here, spin around, and be pointing at the L from the top, and now the players will know that you've spelled the word H-E-L-L-O instead of the word H-E-L-O. Now, 2 other real quick things. If you find that you're playing with people who have really slow connections, it's possible that they may miss where the planchette has gone. So there's 2 things that we can do to help with that, and that'll be within the script itself. First of all, if you scroll down here to line 55 in the script, you can uncomment this line that says send chat. And what that's going to do is actually write the message out to the chat panel as well. So when the planchette moves to the letter A, it will write an A into the chat box. And then when it moves to the next letter, it'll write that letter, and so on and so forth. And that way, if your players are on really slow connections, they will still see the message that's being spelled out. The other thing you can do is scroll down to line 63 and change this pause value here. You can increase it to whatever you want. This is the number of milliseconds, but what I would recommend is you increase it in increments of 250 at a time. That's a quarter of a second each time. And basically what that's going to do is slow down the planchette as it moves from letter to letter. So if you change this to be 1250, then it's going to wait 1.25 seconds in between each movement, and so on and so forth. So those are 2 things that you can do if you need to slow things down, or if your players have slow connections, or maybe on a night when things are just really laggy for you, you can get around it doing this. Okay, now back to the board itself. You notice I also have a handful of macros set up down here at the bottom of the screen, and these macros are how we control the board. I'll put the code for all the macros down in the description as well, but let's take a look at them real quick. So if we open up Ouija No, You see we got the syntax here, Ouija -- respond no. So that means we're going to snap the planchette to the no response over here. The yes response is almost exactly the same, except now we're saying yes. And then it's a similar deal for goodbye. There's the reset, which is Ouija reset. That's going to snap the planchette up to the top marker here where it says Ouija. And then there's our message, which is going to bring up a prompt. There we go. We type in whatever we want to say, hello, or spell out the name of the killer, or whatever it happens to be. We just fill that in, click submit, and then the planchette will start moving around and spelling out the response that we want. Again, all those will be down in the description of the video, so just grab them, bring them into your game, and once you've done that, you're ready to go. Okay, so that's really all you need to do for setup. At this point, go ahead. In the description of the video is a link to my GitHub. You can grab the script from there and then just load that into your game. And if you're not sure how to do that, I'm going to pop a card up into the top right of the screen that'll show you how to load the code into your game. Now, one thing about the messages the Ouija board can give. Short answers work the best. So reveal someone's name, give yes or no answers, or maybe 1 or 2 word answers to a question. Anything longer than that, and it's going to start to get boring while your players watch the planchette bounce around. Also, because there's no space character on a Ouija board, your players aren't going to have an easy way to know when one word stops and the next one starts. So longer answers will make them have to keep all the letters in their heads, and that takes away from the tension and the drama and turns it into a memory game exercise, and that's not as much fun. So if you do need to give long answers out, like the history of Castle Ravenloft or why Old Man Jeb doesn't let anyone into his cornfield after dark, those sorts of things are probably done better as handouts or giving them a friendly ghost to have a conversation with. But for short answers, this technique I think you'll find works really well. So if that's all you're interested in is just getting the script up and running and using it in your games, there you go. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and subscribe to my Patreon. But if you are interested in learning how the script was built, buckle up, because we're about to do that now. Alright, so here I am on my game settings page. We're going to go into settings, API scripts. We're going to say new script. And then let's bump this up a little bit. We want to be able to read this, so we're going to just jump this up to magnification of about 175%. And we're going to call our script Ouija. Very creative on my part, I know. Okay, so the first thing we're going to put in is a line like this that says on ready function. And basically what this is saying is we are going to wait until our campaign is fully loaded before we try to do anything within this script. That's what the on ready means here. All right, now within that, we want to put in this line, which says on chat message function message. And basically what this is saying is when a chat message is entered into the game, we're going to take that message and we're going to run it through whatever is in between these two curly braces here. So we've got that chat message, and now what we want to see is, was that chat message our Ouija command? And so for that, we're going to use a line like this. And so what we're going to do here is if the message type equals API, so that is if it starts with an exclamation point, that's how Roll20 determines if a command is an API command, and the message content starts with exclamation point Ouija, then we're going to do whatever is inside these curly braces here. And to illustrate the kind of stuff we want to do, let's take a look at the Ouija command we were using earlier. So this is the command that we used to move the planchette to the yes marker on the board. So you see here we've got Ouija, there's our initial command, and then we have dash dash, and we're saying that we're responding, and what we're responding is yes. So what we need to do is split this command up into its component parts so that we can tell the script what to do. And so the first thing we're going to do with that is we're going to put in a line like this that says, let arguments equal message content split at the double dash. So we're going to split the initial command at the double dash, and that's going to give us an array. Array item number 0 will be the Ouija command, and then array item number 1 will be respond pipe yes. So we've got that in array item number 1. So that means that our command is actually in args1 in the first array element. So we're going to say let command text equal args1. It's going to be this right here. We're going to trim off any extra spaces in case there were spaces at the end of this. We're just going to trim those off. That's what this is doing. And then we're just going to convert that to lowercase, which is going to make it easier to work with stuff later on. That way, if somebody accidentally types something in uppercase or in mixed case, it's not going to interfere with the script actually performing the commands. So command text, this variable, is going to contain respond pipe yes. So now that means we have a command here and then the command value. So we want to split those up. So we're going to say let params equal command text split at the pipe. And that means we're going to wind up with a second array. And the first element of this new params array is going to be the command respond. And the other item in the array is going to be the value of yes. So for that, it's going to look like this, where we have command equals params 0 and command value equals params 1. So now we have respond isolated and the value of respond isolated as well. Each of these are in their own respective variable. Okay, so now that we've got that taken care of, what we need to do next is go to the game and we want to find the page named Ouija, because that's the page that we're going to be working with. And so that's going to look like this, where we say let Ouija page equal find objects. This is the command that Roll20 uses in order to locate objects within the campaign. And we're saying that we want to find an object whose type is page, so we're looking for a page, named Ouija. Now the find objects command is going to return an array. So if you had multiple pages named Ouija, you would get back a list of all of them. I'm expecting you're only going to have one in here. And that's why we've got this line right here. This is saying, okay, we've got an array of all the pages named Ouija. Give me back the first one, which really should be the only one. And that's what we're going to set Ouija page to. Now, if for whatever reason we can't find the Ouija page, like maybe somebody forgot to actually name the page, or they've moved to a new campaign and they haven't set it up yet, or something like that, we're going to put in some error handling here. So we're going to say if Ouija page equals undefined. So that's basically saying if this page is undefined, or we couldn't find this item, essentially, then we're going to send a chat from Ouija whispering to the GM that we were unable to find a page named Ouija, and we're going to return. So we're just going to jump out of this whole script. We're not going to try to do anything else because we couldn't find the page called Ouija. Assuming we could find the page named Ouija, though, then what we want to do next is find all of the tokens that are on the Ouija page. We're going to need to work with those, and that's going to look like this. We're going to say let Ouija objects equal find objects of type graphic. And in Roll20, graphics are tokens and maps. So any item that falls into those two categories is considered a graphic. So what we're saying here is find all the tokens that are on the Ouija page. And that's what this page ID is saying here. We're getting Ouija page's ID and we're passing that in. So we're going to get back an array of all of the tokens that are on the Ouija page. So that'll be the yes and no markers, the goodbye marker, the markers for all the numbers and letters. We're going to get all those back and stored in this Ouija objects variable. Okay, now, depending on what we're going to do, whether we're saying yes or no or spelling out a message, we're going to use different items from this Ouija objects variable. But there's one object that we're going to use all the time, and that's going to be the planchette. So no matter what kind of command we're doing, we're going to need the planchette. So we're just going to get that one declared right now. And for that, we're letting planchette equal ouijaobjects.filter. And what filter does is it lets you look through an array and find a set of items within that array that match a set of specified criteria. And the criteria that we're looking for here is we want to find an object whose name is Ouija planchette. So that's what we want to find here. Now you may be looking at this and going, well, Nick, what's up with this arrow thing here? Well, this is just a shorthand syntax. If we were to do this out completely, it would look like this, where we say let planchette equal ouijaobjects.filter, so very much the same as we start here, But then we would pass in a function with whatever object we were looking to work with. And we would basically say, for each object in the Ouija objects array, we want to return objects whose name is Ouija planchette. So it's doing the exact same thing, it's a shorter way of writing this out. We can actually get it all on one line instead of splitting it across 3 lines. So essentially what happens is this arrow syntax here replaces the need to put in function, open parentheses, object, open curly brace, this bit, and then the closing curly brace. So it's just shortening up what we're actually needing to write. And for short commands, I find this works a lot better. It's a much cleaner way to read. We can see here, yes, we're taking the objects that have a name of Ouija planchette and we're returning those. Now, like we said earlier, this is going to give back an array of items that match our criteria. So if there were multiple planchettes on the board, which again, I'm assuming there aren't, then we are only interested in the first one, which is going to be item number 0. So this should return an array with just one item in it. We're basically saying that one item is the planchette. Now, just like before, we want to build in some error handling in case the planchette can't be found. So we're going to do that with something very similar right here. We're going to say that if the planchette is undefined, then we're going to send a message to the GM saying that we couldn't find a token called Ouija planchette. Okay, so we found our Ouija page, we found all the tokens on the Ouija page, we found the planchette. Now it's time to actually do something. We want to actually spell out a message or say yes or no or whatever it is. So what we're going to do next is put in a switch command. And the switch command is going to look like this. And basically what this is going to do is say, depending on what was typed for the command, do something different. So if the text that was typed for command is message, then we're going to call a helper function here called spell out message, and we're going to pass in the planchette, the Ouija objects, and whatever text that makes up the message. If we are saying that we're going to respond, then we're going to move the planchette, and it's going to be moving towards yes or no or goodbye, whatever it happens to be. And then if it's reset, then we're going to move the planchette to the reset object on the page. Now we've also got this default, and that's if somebody puts in something that isn't message responder reset. So if somebody typed in, Ouija -- Nick, then that's going to respond with the spirits did not recognize that command, because we don't want the script to not do anything, because then people might think it's broken. We want to give some feedback saying that that command, wasn't something that was recognized. Okay, so now as you can see, we've got a couple of helper functions that we need to build. We need to build spelled out message, and we need to build move planchette. So let's do move planchette first, because spell out message is actually going to use that function. And as I look at this real quick, I realize I have an extra parenthesis right here, so I'm just going to delete that. All right, there we go. And now we're going to build that move planchette function. So that's going to start out like this, where we are moving the planchette. We're going to pass in the planchette itself, the array of Ouija objects, and the target that we want to move the planchette to. And that's all going to live inside these curly braces right here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is declare a new variable called target. And target is going to be the object that we want to move the planchette to. So basically what we're saying here is let target equal Ouija objects filter. So we're taking the array of Ouija objects and we're just looking specifically for whatever one we've passed in here. So if we're looking for the letter A, then we're looking for Ouija _ A. And we're going to find that object in the array of Ouija objects and set it equal to target. And again, we're just using that same arrow notation that we used up here on line 18. Okay, so we've got our target, and just like before, we want to build in a little bit of error checking here, just in case somebody passes in something that they forgot to set up properly, or maybe if they had a typo in what they've put in. So what we're going to say is if target is undefined, then we're going to send a message to the GM saying that we were unable to locate that item, and then we'll return. Okay, now, really all that needs to happen next then is the planchette needs to be moved to the target item. And that's going to be done with a line that looks like this, where we say planchette set, and then what properties of the planchette are we setting? So we're going to set its left, top, and rotation properties. And you can think of the left and the top as like the X and Y coordinates of the planchette. And essentially what we're saying here is find the target item and move the planchette on top of it. And we're also going to match that target item's rotation so that the planchette is pointing directly at it. But we also need to take into consideration the scenario when the planchette is already on a particular letter and it needs to move to the top row of markers. So again, going back to our hello example, we're already on the L. We need to move the planchette up to the L's top marker so that we can point at the L a second time in a row. And we're going to do that with a bit of code that looks like this. So what we're saying here on line 48 is if the planchette's left property already equals the target's left property and the planchette's top already equals the target's top, then we're going to redefine target. Instead of looking for an item called target name, we're going to look for target name 2. So you remember earlier we set up our L2 and our Z2 and all those other duplicated tokens. Now we're looking for those. So we're going to say, all right, if we're already on the letter, then we're going to change target to be that secondary token. And then the last thing we're going to do with this function is add in that command right here to send the target's name to the chat. So again, if you have a really slow connection or if things are laggy one particular night, you can uncomment this line and it will log the letters that the planchette is moving to into the chat, and that way nobody misses anything. But I'm going to leave that commented out for right now. All right, so let's save our script. And now we're going to build the final helper function, which is the spell out message function. So I'm just going to actually just copy and paste that whole thing in here. There we go. And so the function, just like the move planchette function, it takes the planchette, the Ouija objects, and the message text. And we're going to start out here by taking the message text and we're going to replace any white space in the message text with nothing. And that's what this is doing right here. This is a regular expression that says grab all of the white space that's in there and just replace it with nothing. So for example, if we had typed in hello world into the message box, then what we're going to do is remove the spaces so we just have one continuous string of text. Then on our next line, on line 61, we're declaring a variable called message and we're setting that equal to message text split. Now you remember earlier we were talking about how split takes whatever you've put in and splits it into an array. But we haven't defined what character we're splitting at here. We didn't say like we were splitting at a double dash or a pipe or anything like that. Well, when you put in a split like this, what happens is it's going to take the entire string and make it so that each letter is its own element in the string. So effectively it's going to look like this, where we've taken our continuous string here and we've made it so there's a single element for each letter in the array. So we have one array now with H, E, L, L, O, and so on. Okay, we've declared a couple of other variables here that I'm going to come back to in a minute. But really the upshot is, at this point, for each letter in the message, we're going to move the planchette to that letter. Thing is, though, we need to be able to pause in between each movement, right? We don't want to have the planchette just flying all over the board. We need to delay it in between each movement. And that's what this set timeout function is doing. So we're going to move the planchette, but then right here, we're pausing. And how much we pause depends on what letter we're on. And that's where these other variables that we created earlier come into play. So we're starting out here with a variable called counter. That starts out at 0, and our delay is 1,000, that's milliseconds. And then we also have a pause constant here, which is also 1,000 milliseconds. So what we're saying here is counter 0 times 1,000, that's 0, plus pause is 1,000. So we're going to wait 1,000 milliseconds. That is, we're going to wait 1 second before moving to the first letter in our message. Then we increase the value of counter. So now counter equals 1. 1 times 1,000 plus 1,000 is 2,000. So that means that after 2 seconds, we're going to move to the second letter. And then it'll be 3,000 and so on and so forth. Now I realize this may make it sound like we're waiting a second before moving to the first letter, and then we're going to wait 2 seconds before moving to the next letter, and then wait 3 seconds before moving to the next letter, and that makes it sound like there's going to be these increasing delays between each movement of the planchette. But that's not what's going to happen. Imagine we start counting up from 0, right? So we count at 1, and at 1 we move to the first letter in the message. And then we go up to 2. Now we move to the second letter. Then we go to 3. Now we move to the third letter. So 3 total seconds have elapsed. But because our first movement took place on the count of 1, and our second movement took place on the count of 2, and the third movement took place on the count of 3, there appears to the end user that only 1 second has elapsed in between each movement. So that's the whole script right there. Now we can save this and take it for a spin. So let's jump back into the game here. And you can see this is really blown up because I was at 175% for the zoom here. So I'm going to zoom way back out in my browser. There we go. And let's go ahead, let's put in a message. Let's just say hello and submit. H-E-L, jump back up to the top. There we go. And O. Fantastic. And, we can do the other stuff here. We can go to no. We can go to no again. We can say yes. So all these are working properly. Now, like I said earlier, if you find that things are moving too fast, you've got a couple of options. You can uncomment send chat command, and then that will write the message into the chat box. So let's go ahead, let's do that. If I go back into the chat here and we say, hello again, you see that the Ouija is spelling that out. So now if one of our players has a really bad connection or something like that, we can still have them see the message. And then additionally, if you do need to adjust the amount of time that you're waiting, you can do that by tweaking the pause constant right here. So there you have it. That's how you can build an interactive Ouija board in Roll20. And I think you'll find this adds a whole level of tension into your games if you get some nice spooky music going in the background while the name of a killer is being spelled out on the board. I think it really adds something to the game that your players will enjoy. So if you do decide to use this in your games, please drop me a note down in the comments. Let me know how it went, because I really want to know how your players found it. And in the meantime, I just want to say thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.